Hello and welcome to CT's fourth episode in our Creative Conversation series. This week it will be a special edition to celebrate International Women's Day. We are celebrating today with an all-female panel with special guests joining us from Moscow, Madrid, London and of course Wales. Chapman Taylor have always supported women pursuing career ambitions and believe that female role models have a crucial part to play in encouraging other women to choose architecture as a career. In the first decade of this century, women accounted for 34 to 37% of Chapman Taylor's employees. Today, women make up about 50% of Chapman Taylor's global membership and growing. We are very proud of that fact. Of course, that doesn't mean there isn't more work to do. Over the next few years, we expect to see the great improvement in female representation across our international business, translating in representation at director level. In addition, Chapman Taylor want to build on our improvement by encouraging more women to choose architecture and design as a career. We commit to avoiding complacency in this regard. It is our belief that a wide range of experiences play a crucial role in our creative success, bringing a synthesis of the very best and latest design ideas from all perspectives. Joining us today is Senior Architect Rocío Martinez from our Madrid studio, Associate Director Joanna Stott from our London studio, and Liliya Kadieva from our Moscow studio, who's the marketing coordinator. So, welcome to you all today and thank you for joining us. Could you please give us a little introduction about yourselves and how long you've been at Chapman Taylor? So, Rocío, should we start with you?
Hello, everybody. My name is Rocío. As you said, I'm from Madrid office, and I started working in Chapman Taylor in 2013. I started in Shanghai office, and I've been working there for a couple of years, and then I moved to Madrid office in 2015, and I've been working in the feasibility team for about 7 years almost. And I've been working in national projects and also in international, most in the Middle East.
Ah, great. Okay, Joanna?
I've been with Chapman Taylor for approximately 13 years. I came to Chapman Taylor because I had just completed a large mixed-use development, town centre development with a particular client who also had a very similar tricky scheme with Chapman Taylor. And I was looking to change direction and change up. And it just so happened that a director at Chapman Taylor I had previously worked with. So I moved from one end of Kensington High Street to the other end of Kensington High Street, walked out of a PC on a job with my previous practice, and walked into a new job at Chapman Taylor within a week. It was a brave new world. It was a bit shocking being opposite Marks and Spencer's for too long, too much shopping going on there. But since then, I am a bit of an all-rounder. I will do any types of work from master plan. I've worked in international feasibility, transportation. I did a lot of transportation in my previous practice. And now I tend to do asset enhancements, large and small. Basically, if you can build it, it needs building, I'll look at it. Fantastic. And that's the sheer joy of architecture, knowing how to do it and looking at it and go, yeah, I can do that, I can build that. When I was very, very young, I used to build structures in the back garden, like really massive structures, sort of double-story things. And my father used to say, what do you want to do? And I only had the words bricklayer. He said, no, darling, you don't want to be a bricklayer. What you really want to be is an architect. And it was kind of a path that was set from being extremely young.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
You can add bricklaying to your basket as well.
I'm not bad at brick dimensions.
Liliya, to Moscow?
Yeah, I joined Chapman Taylor in 2013 after working as a personal assistant and FMCG company, and I was actually looking for a bigger company, more international wide, and some more experience. So I was approached by HR person from Chapman Taylor, and he invited me to the interview. And obviously, I liked the company, and the directors liked me, so they invited me to the position of the personal assistant. And during those 7 years. I worked training my PA skills, taking different courses, and still looking for my way. And then directors probably noticed my communication skills and my true love to organize and everything, and they suggested me to try marketing responsibilities, and that was just a true love from the first sight. So now I do social media marketing for Russia, work during exhibitions, and have lots of opportunities to communicate with many different people, conferences, events, and I try my best to help as much as I can to find opportunities to develop our business in Russia and CIS countries.
Wow, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a kind of a growth, I would say.
Yeah, it's a great sort of success story. So Liliya, I guess the first question that I've been meaning to ask you is, I believe that the office at one point was made up of 90% women, which is great. And I just want to ask, from your perspective, why do you think that is, and how has it been such a success?
True. Well, I would say that every person was selected by the talent and experience, obviously. So those women we work with were the best candidates, obviously, for these positions during the interviews over the other candidates. And we actually now have 3 men. Yeah, but they are very quiet and serious, I would say. But still, we are a family. Moscow team has always been dominated by women. Historically, I would say. So we had always had lots of women working there, and it's always a pleasure to work among such talented ladies, and it's a pleasure to see how women gain their place and power in business here in Russia. It is inspiring to see how they are developing huge projects, big developments of national importance, and they are a great source of inspiration. So yeah, they are all there because they are talented and experienced.
That's fantastic, and I think it's a great example to other women who are looking to study architecture, to see those role models, when they want to choose that career. Because I think more now that we are finding more role models within the industry, which is great. And I think, Joanna, it'd be really interesting to hear your perspective of when you chose to study architecture, on how did you see it in terms of men and women?
Well, it might sound a little bit bizarre, but I don't really have any role model names that I would pick out of a hat, because of the way that I was brought up. My parents were both extremely professional people and high achievers. And if anything, they were my role models, and their ethos of working and understanding is what took me forward. So it was always what Liliya just said then, merit and what you can actually bring to the job and provide, working hard and being honest. So that's how I set out, and that's how I've always run my career and my life, that you work hard, you're professional, you're always very, very honest. Even when you get it wrong, you're very, very honest. So I'm not very good at the role model thing. I would like to think that possibly the way that I was brought up is a role model to others. And I've done a lot of student work in the past where they've gone on to get their Part 3, and it's been a lot of women who have done that. But I'm possibly quite a bit older than you people. And when I first started out at college, there was probably about a 50-50 split when you first started out in your first degree. And then by the time you got to do your diploma, it was probably about 2/3 of the women had dropped out. And you were very much not the norm at that moment in time. And I also think that I was particularly lucky with my first big project and practice that I worked with, which was a very small practice of 2 extraordinarily old-fashioned straight-laced men who would stand at their drawing boards smoking pipes going, "Joanna, what is this? What is this line on the drawing?" And I mean, they were old-fashioned, charming men with manners. And we were a great team, and I learned to think for myself because of them. And it just perpetuated how I was initially brought up. I think women need to come to the game, come to the profession that I don't particularly like gender definitions, but you have to come with knowing that this is the profession that you're in, and this is how you should be behaving, and this is the job that you're doing, and therefore the treatment of you, one would expect, is the same as a man. However, we all know that's not the case.
Yeah.
But it's then how you deal with it, and you deal with it with grace and elegance. I've had times where I've had contractors in my face shouting at me, there'll be spittle flying. And I'll say, well, that's all very well, but it's still not what's on the drawing that you've built, so take it down. And then generally in the way that you say it, they laugh and go, yeah, all right then, and off they go. But I had difficulty with role models.
Yeah, no, I think that's I think the fact that your mother and father were your role models is great, and I think they've obviously influenced you throughout your life and your career, and still do by the sounds of it, which is great.
I was extremely. I'm a fortunate person with my parents. Of that, there is no doubt.
Yeah. So just to go back on your point about when you were studying and 2/3 of the women dropped out, why do you think that was?
Well, a couple of things. One was at that point in time, there was quite a big recession going on in architecture, the like of which you haven't seen 2008. It was much, much worse than that. And I think a lot of people just decided that that wasn't going to be for them. And a lot of women friends that I knew at the time went into teaching. They got the degree, then they went into the teaching degree and went off in that way, or they got married or that type of thing. But it was definitely, there was a professional dropout, which is why you probably see there's very few women of my age in the starters of architecture at this moment in time. It can go back to that point where there was that massive recession and people just left the industry. But it happened to men as well. A lot of men left the industry at that time.
Yeah. And I guess then it would probably seem risky to stay in that career and rather than go to teaching where
it definitely was. I mean, the whole I had to diversify in my career. I couldn't stay in straight architecture, and I had to go off and work in I worked for Sir William Halcrow, which is why I did a lot of international master planning, and I worked in Saudi and Sharjah and Dubai for about 7 years. I worked on projects out there, and it was unusual for me to be there, but when I came back, back to mainstream architecture, it was very noticeable of how few women were still in the office. And you never saw women on the site, and you never saw women in the contractors as well. You were and then it took probably about 5 or 6 years for younger generations who'd come through and qualified, starting to bring the numbers up. But definitely within my age range, we're still right, I think.
That's great. So Rocío, could you give us a little sort of background onto what it's like over in Madrid and what your experiences have been in your office or throughout your career in studying?
Okay, well, in Madrid, we are like 50-50%. It's like the reflection of what is happening at university and everywhere is like, 50% of the students are girls and are men. So it's quite proportion what we have. As we already said, it's about talenting, and so it's not a career that it's only for females. So we are just designers. So I think Madrid office is quite balanced on that aspect. And then, during like some challenges, like being woman, it's like some difficult things. Like we've been working in a retail sector that is more used to men faces or that things. But I think women are growing on that aspect, and just not because they're women. It's like we are talented people. We are working for that, and so
yeah,
that's how it's working the Spanish market now. And then we are also, I have no problems with working in Middle East also. with other colleagues in Dubai office and these things. We are traveling there, and there's no problem. So I think everything is working for both genders.
Yeah, I think it's definitely improved, over the last decade, and I think it will continue to improve. Joanna?
It's interesting, Rocío, going to Saudi and Dubai. When I was young and I went there, I mean, it was a much different climate than it is now. And I only went to Dubai very briefly a couple of years ago for Chapman Taylor, but I used to go quite regularly, and you were always Miss Joanna. And the way that you were treated was with real kid gloves and extreme care back in the day. Now you're just part of the team. You were very different. Sort of like, oh, we don't quite know how to handle you. So they used to just go that ultra polite way, ultra polite. I once nearly got shot by the HRH discharge's bodyguard because I came running around the corner because I was late for a meeting. So that was probably the biggest incident I ever had out in Shasha. But the bodyguard was doing his job. But it was very different the way they treated you. They didn't understand what a woman was in those days. So they just went the ultra polite.
Oh, well, at least it was that way. Right, okay, so next we're going to jump into some questions about design. So I think I have sent over some questions for you to prepare in advance. So Rocío, we could start with you. What do you think the key to good design is?
Well, from my point of view, I'm working from the feasibility team. So the first stage of any project, I think a good design needs to have the sense of place. It needs to be integrated. It not necessarily has to fit on the place, but maybe the contrast is the right solution. You have to find the balance of those things. Orientation is quite important. Even materials need to understand the context, the maintenance, durability, sustainability. There is something that is on top of the main issues nowadays, and then I think one of the most important things in this moment is thinking about a flexible building, flexible space, flexible project that it needs to be adaptable to the change, and it needs to change with the lifetime. And also maybe it needs to be adaptable if in the future it needs an extension, reduction. So it needs to fit with the market production and requirements. So basically it's what I said, talking about the sense of place and then to be a flexible project.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think future-proofing and sustainability is at the heart of most projects now, and sense of place and public realm are big factors. Wouldn't you agree, Joanna?
I agree with all those points, but I think there's a fundamental part of really good design, which is understanding the brief and understanding what your client wants. And quite a lot of the time, your client doesn't actually know how they want a building to work. And it's our job as good designers to say, well, hang on a sec, you're possibly not looking at this in the right way, and finding a way through that does produce a building that works and it's fit for purpose, and also that it's efficient and it's elegant, and it's I like to word even the smallest scheme can have an element of beauty in it, and I always like to see that little element of beauty in the scheme. And you can get that by understanding what it is this building is trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely responding to the user requirement is very important. I agree. And I've worked on many projects where clients actually don't really know what they want, and as architects we have helped create those briefs for clients.
Creating the brief is essential, that we understand it and make sure that the client, going back to the client, that they understand the brief. Is this really what you want to do? Is this really fit for this building life? Mm-hmm. And about flexibility and moving forward. you're looking at the building life. If you design something which comes to a dead end in a very short space of time because there isn't the longevity or, as Rocío says, the flexibility of the scheme, then it's a poor design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Joanna, for you, are there any standout projects in your career that you've designed yourself, or that from an architect that you admire, that you sort of is your to-go-to? Is there any particular project?
Well, I mean, I go back because there's so many of them I've done. I remember when I was with William Halcrow, and we did a lot of island and land reclamation projects, and one of the lagoon projects that we did in Sharjah really stands out for me. In transportation, when I did Pier 6 at Heathrow, which was for the new A380 plane coming in, whilst it was pretty hard work, as you know, on Harrod, working at Heathrow, it can be pretty hard work.
Yeah.
When we stood on the roof and we watched the new A380 come in to the pier, it was like, wow, that's something. And of course, now the A380 is probably a flying dinosaur no more. But I had to do a landscape project around a rather bizarre new theatre in a rural town in the UK, and everything about the theatre went wrong, and it ended up we had to have ground loop systems and you name it underneath the public realm area that we were designing, and I basically had to learn how to do landscaping from square one. And it was a joyful project to do, and we won a sustainability award for it. And I don't know whether we won it because I just had to work so blooming hard to learn what to do on it. And it was tiny, but it still stands out as like, well, I really enjoyed the project.
Yeah, brilliant. That's fantastic. So that leads us on quite nicely. I think maybe Liliya, we can come to you next. And how would you say you get your creative juices flowing, whether it's, you know, architecture or marketing? You know, we've all got creativity in us. How would you say you get your juices flowing?
Yeah, well, for me, the inspiration and the ideas come from random sources. It might be nature, places, people, well, anything that surrounds me. I like to discover new trends and features, and as a marketing person, I always have to know different trends and follow them. So I admire listening to different podcasts and interviews of successful people. That always helps. And also I find inspiration in books and literature, obviously, as any person, as any lady, I think, which admires me. Yeah.
And do you think it's important to follow trends, or do you think you should, you know, do you think we should be designing for longevity rather than trends?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's really important to follow trends, but you definitely cannot ignore them. You need to take them into account when doing something. So even if when we develop our marketing strategy or when we develop any project, we always take into account the existing trends and try to apply them if it is appropriate.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a big trend at the moment is, you know, online socials and communicating online, particularly with the pandemic. You know, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. We've all been communicating via Teams, Skype, Zoom, whatever it is. And I think it's, you know, that sort of communication has been heightened now. What do you think about that?
I think recently we had a very good opportunity. We were invited as an experts for a Mapping Russia webinar where our senior architect Alina Yefimovich presented Chapman Taylor and our experience in redeveloping and reconstruction projects. And actually it is a really good opportunity to show our experience, to tell about our company, because it's not always when you take part in some offline events, it's not always you have time to speak about the company. So yeah, it's a good opportunity. Although I think people really missed the opportunity to meet personally and just to spend time together. So here in Russia, we have, I think, a quite better now situation with the lockdown. We are not on a lockdown actually, so we all back to work, and the conferences and events are back to normal, so we still have our exhibitions and conferences, and we meet in person. And yeah, but we still keep that tendency to participate in online sessions, and this is really a good experience.
Yeah, and I bet particularly with marketing internationally, because all of countries are coming out of lockdowns at different stages, then it's important to keep that connectivity up.
Yeah, that's true.
Can't fly to the UK. Or other countries. And so, Rocío, what about you? Do you have any particular quirks on how you get your creative juices flowing?
Well, I think it's quite important to be positive. When you start being negative, it's impossible to be creative. So you have to be a positive mindset. And then I always have like a pen and a paper next to me, or even the phone, because sometimes you are doing something opposite to what you are working on, and then you have the idea. You have to write it down. And it usually happens when you're doing exercise, sometimes in the shower. You're thinking, and it's like, wow, that's a good idea. This could work. Well, that's also talking to different people. So being like challenging in yourself. So yes, I think changing your mind most of the times helps you to be creative in the office. Being like speaking even with my father or family, people doesn't know anything about architecture. It helps me to keep my mind clear and have good ideas.
Reset the mind.
Yes, that's quite important.
And I find sometimes it's when I'm sleeping, or when I'm thinking about the project or the deadline when you're going to sleep. That's when it's sort of the light bulb moment hits, and you're like, you're up all night then.
Yeah, you need time to stop. That's what I said. Like shower, I don't know, different things, not related with your work.
What about you, Joanna?
Very similar to Rocío, but when you get that initial idea, I always say that there's always a soundtrack to buildings. I'm very into my music, and I've always got a lot of you have to start in a positive way, exactly what you just said, Rocío. And when you're thinking in a positive manner and you've got a lightness in your spirit, I think that you work a lot better. And I do have soundtracks to buildings going way back, back to the days of early Radiohead music. I can tell you exactly what I was listening to, certain parts of that building were done. And I always used to say, if you stray around seeing your intro, stop, switch it off, reset, go back.
That's brilliant. I'd love to have a Spotify playlist of your building soundtracks, Joanna.
I did actually provide Stephen with one once, and he said, "Oh, you have to upload them yourself."
Oh. So next, I guess
it was a bit Stevie Wonder and Mark Bolan at the time. It was a strange moment in time.
Oh, that's it. Brilliant. Well, I guess we have hit some of these in the conversation so far, but are there any key challenges for either one of you that have really stood out in your career, whether it's to do with design or personal reasons? Are there any challenges that stand out that you overcame that you'd like to share with us all today? Liliya, we could start with you.
Yeah, well, I always feel the high level of the company I work for and the importance of the business we do. And my work in terms of marketing is about client relations, exhibitions, helping in spreading our business all over. And here, the main challenge is to explain people the importance of our work and the importance of working with us, the benefits they get from working with Chapman Taylor. And either due to Russian mentality or other things, sometimes it might be very difficult here because obviously sometimes the client wants to get the good design, but spending not really a lot of money, so they want to save. And we always try to explain them that it's not always possible, actually. And another huge part of my job is assisting. I still do the assistance to director and the team. So here's the challenge to make everyone happy, obviously, to provide the most necessary help they need and make everything so comfortable so they might work without distracting to things of minor importance. So I think basically the general challenge is to find the right balance in this.
I think that's a really interesting perspective you have at the beginning there, because I think it's actually not necessarily a problem, but it's something we do have to address as architects, is trying to get across to our clients why you need an architect, especially when, especially smaller scale residential, and it's very. I have often have conversations with friends and family on why it's important to have an architect, and I think in our industry we have to do more to sort of say the reasons on why it's good to have an architect. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, either of you, Joanna or Rocío.
Well, I totally agree with you. The industry is very different from when I was younger. The advent of the project manager being the conduit between yourself and the client has, and then the influence of the contractor with design and build, we definitely lost our footing within the industry, and having to explain why you have a concern about something, and then it goes through this filter of the PM. Your message and your strength, it gets diluted, and certainly I come across this in big projects and small projects. Right now, I'm suffering it because the power of the PM doesn't quite understand what it is you're saying to them, and trying to circumnavigate, get around them, and actually say to the client, this is what you need. You've got to let us do our job for you, is quite a challenge at the moment. But the interesting thing is about this little part of this conversation is this is about our professional job. It's not whether we're just women in the industry. It's because we are fully fledged professionals, and doing our job as an architect is the challenge at the moment. Okay, we have challenges as women as well, but being an architect and establishing ourselves or re-establishing ourselves it's really quite a big concern.
Yeah, and typically back in when my granddad was an architect, he used to say, Angharad, we wear many hats. We're the QS, we're the structural engineer, we're from the outset we design to be able to build something. And there's a lot of it's been diluted a lot over the years, I think, our role, especially with design and build coming in. But I think it's really important that we do send a message out to clients that architects are important, and you do get better buildings as a result. Rocío, what's your take on that?
Yes, well, I think professionally the most important thing is the communication with the client, the connection, because most of the time we have plenty of drawings, plenty of ideas. We are architects, we're born for that role. We know how to design, or we love designing, but we need to communicate and transmit to the client what we are doing, all the ideas. Just don't leave it on the table and forget. So I think the most important challenge I have is, from my point of view, is the way of presenting, of making that document that puts everything together and can be sold without any explaining anything. So we have large projects that it's very difficult to explain all the ideas, parts, and the attention of the people. It's been reduced only to 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then people start thinking about other things. So you really need to produce that wow effect, that interest on the people you are showing your proposal. So I think that's the most important thing and challenge we have now.
Definitely, yeah, I can agree more. So just moving away a little bit from architecture and design, or maybe this might come into it. Do any of you have any guilty pleasures you'd like to share that you had during lockdown?
Shopping.
Shopping, is it, Joanna?
Get the economy going.
You're keeping M&S in business?
Everybody.
or Jeff Bezos?
I think the visit to the fridge. I have a meeting every hour with the fridge. I'm not even hungry, but it's at home and it's very close. So, okay, I'm not speaking to anyone. I'm alone. So we are like, okay, let's see if the fridge is talking to me or I don't know. And finally you eat, you drink. So the fridge is a good friend.
Yeah, I think definitely in the first lockdown, the drinking had increased a lot, but the novelty kind of worn off now. it's right, we need to exercise and try and eat healthily, but yeah, it's definitely the binge eating is going to have to stop when we're back in the office. What about you, Liliya? Anything that you experienced?
Yeah, we had actually, I think for us the lockdown for my family, the lockdown was a good possibility to communicate with each other, because it's like everyone works and we don't have much time to spend time together. But we had one guilty pleasure with my husband. We ride a bicycle at night. So when everyone is at home, no police, so we just took the bicycles out and we were riding around because we were so exhausted to stay at home, as we have 2 kids and so we are all in one place. And then we just changed with our neighbors. So one night we were riding a bicycle and they were looking for all the kids, and then we changed the next night, they were riding bicycles and we were looking for all the kids. So that was funny. And also we did a lot of cooking. I think we cooked everything and as many different as recipes that we wouldn't cook in a normal everyday life. So that was kind of a guilty pleasure, so I would say.
Well, that's positive.
Yeah.
We've all become chefs. I love it.
True.
Yeah, brilliant. So, and final questions to you all. Like, I guess in Russia things have opened up, and I don't know if international travel's available to you now, but what's the first thing that you're going to do when the sort of world opens up again and we're COVID free, if that's ever going to happen? But when we're able.
If the world's open up again, we will all finally go to MIPIM and MAPIC and meet there in Cannes, finally. I would say, just joking. See you there. Yeah, but in fact, during the lockdown, I think I understood that sometimes we need to find time for pleasures and impressions to get some impressions. So I would always love to go to Istanbul. So I think first thing I would do is I would find a couple of days just to fly there and dig down into that atmosphere of Istanbul. This is what just came to my mind now.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I think we're all going to have to be wearing Factor 50.
Yeah, well, I was on holiday. In winter. I moved to the Caucasus just for 3 weeks to see the relatives that we haven't seen for a year or so. So I had a short holiday, but that was not abroad. So I hope that finally I would go somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Rocío?
Well, I think I will organize a big party called Bye Bye COVID or something like that.
Yeah.
with all friends, and to be relaxed instead of I'm doing something wrong, but thinking all the negative things COVID is bringing up, and put all the people together. And also I booked a trip to Japan last March, and I couldn't go, so maybe I will take it again and travel to Tokyo. It's something I was waiting almost 1 year, and then COVID came and
it's messed up all our plans. My sister was supposed to get married. Yeah, it's all just been pushed back.
Yeah.
Let's hope next year will be different. What about you, Joanna? What's the first thing you're going to do?
I would like to just go somewhere else. I mean, I'm lucky. I live in West London, and I've got no complaints. But I would like to just go somewhere else for a holiday. And I keep saying to my fella, we'll just go back to the south of France, because I just want to sit in the swimming pool. That's it. Sit in the swimming pool in the south of France
and feel the heat.
Drink a glass of rosé.
Yeah. Nice.
You.
Chilled bottle of Whispering Angel.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you all, and please join us on our next episode of Creative Conversations, where we'll be interviewing a few more of the women across the International Studio. So thank you very much to all of you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.